In New York, you could still be paying full price for groceries while helping support someone else's 30% discount. The mayor and the city have announced a pilot program that would invest $70 million to create 5 city-backed affordable grocery stores, one in each borough. At those stores, selected foods could be discounted by as much as 30%. On paper, that sounds like a straightforward way to lower the cost of living. But once these stores open, the real question will not be just how much shoppers save. It will be what happens when the actual costs of food, labor, energy, and daily operations come in higher than expected, and who covers the gap. Let's start with the 30% promise. That number has clear limits. It applies only to a defined group of core products sold at 5 designated stores, including fresh produce, meat, seafood, and some basic grocery staples. Now picture 2 New York families. The first family lives close enough to use one of these stores every week and regularly buys the items covered by the discount. The second family may live too far away, have limited transportation, or simply be unable to shop there often. That family keeps buying groceries at its usual supermarket and keeps paying normal market prices. Both families live in the same city system supporting the program, but they do not receive the same direct benefit. That does not mean the second family will get a separate bill to pay for the first family's groceries. But it does reveal a real divide. The people who directly receive the benefit and the people helping support the system are not exactly the same group. That is why access matters. A 30% discount at 5 stores is not the same as a 30% discount for every New Yorker. And once the initial $70 million has been spent, that divide may become even more important, because it leads to the second question. When an eligible shopper saves $30 at checkout, where does that missing $30 come from? A normal grocery store has to cover its major costs through sales revenue: the building, construction, rent, employees, inventory, spoilage, and everyday operating losses. New York City's plan does not simply buy groceries and resell them at a lower price. Instead, the city lowers the operator's cost of doing business, and in return, it gains leverage over the prices the operator is required to charge. The city can provide the site, construction, and renovation funding, and in some cases, support for rent, property taxes, or targeted subsidies on core food items. The contract then turns that public support into an obligation for the operator to keep certain prices low. That is the single mechanism behind the entire plan. The private operator buys the food, hires the workers, manages the inventory, absorbs spoilage, and runs the store. The city chooses the location, puts in the capital, defines which products receive the discount, enforces the pricing rules, and decides which subsidy proposals to accept. The amount of public support each operator requests is also one of the factors the city can consider during the bidding process, and this is where the real who pays question begins. The $70 million can help build and open 5 stores, but it cannot answer what happens in year 2 if food, wages, or energy costs rise while the low price requirement stays the same. That leaves 3 major contract questions. First, is the ongoing public support fixed and capped, or can it increase as costs rise? Second, if a store loses money, does the operator absorb the loss, cut costs, leave the contract, or ask the city for more support? And third, if the operator fails to meet its targets, can the city enforce the rules or end the agreement without taking on an even larger financial obligation? Those terms will determine whether New York is buying a clearly defined service at a controlled price or creating a commitment that could keep expanding after the stores open. The public evidence available so far does not answer those questions. We cannot say the city will definitely cover every loss, but we also cannot treat the initial $70 million as the final cost. A well-designed contract could put real boundaries around the risk: a clearly defined subsidy cap, measurable price and service standards, transparent reporting, and a credible way for the city to exit. There is also a reasonable case for why the model could work: lower occupancy costs, property support, private label products, and stronger wholesale partnerships may give an experienced operator enough room to hit the price target without pushing every operating shortfall back onto the city. So it is possible that New York could buy a measurable grocery discount service for a known and limited public cost. Here is our judgment. The discount percentage tells you how much a shopper might save. The loss allocation terms tell you whether the public financial risk is actually under control. Which safeguard matters more to you: a hard cap on public subsidies or a rule requiring the operator to absorb operating losses? Choose one in the comments. And if you want to keep following this policy as the details become public, Subscribe to the channel. Now the answer to the title is clearer. The 30% discount is a real target, but the cost has not disappeared. Part of it has simply been moved off the shopper's receipt. The contract will decide whether that cost shift stays limited or keeps growing after the stores open. For families outside the practical service area, the consequence is simple. Your own grocery receipt may still show full price. You may never regularly use one of the discounted stores, but shared city resources may still help create lower prices somewhere else. That does not prove the program is bad. It proves that the shelf price alone cannot tell you the true cost of the program or who ultimately carries the risk. The next important update is not another rendering, another store address, or another promise about how much shoppers could save. It is the first operating contract. Watch 4 things: the amount of ongoing support, whether that support has a cap or an adjustment formula, who is responsible for operating losses, and how the city can exit if the results do not justify the cost. If the public commitment is fixed and capped, and the operator is responsible for losses, this program will look more like a controlled experiment. But if subsidies automatically rise with costs, or the contract pushes operating deficits back onto the city, the same 30% off sign could represent a much larger public financial obligation. The operating contract is the real price tag of this plan, and that is what Capital in Focus follows, not just the promise, but the money, the rules, and the responsibility behind it. Subscribe before the contract is released. Once it becomes public, we will compare the advertised 30% discount with the actual subsidy cap, the loss rules, and the exit terms, and use the evidence to answer the title question again: who is really paying?